All right, welcome to lesson 11. As always, we're going to log in. This time I'll log into my home account. And for this one, we're going to create a new project. And this new project is going to be a knob that we use for clamp downs. And we're going to create this a fairly small project, but there's some complicated elements to it. And that's what we want to go through here. So let's start by creating a rectangle. And this rectangle, I'll go over here and change the size. It's going to be 1.5 inches wide, and the height is going to be 5/8 of an inch. And I can type 5/8 in there, or 0.625. Right. Now, that's a pretty small object for this board, and the scrap piece I'm going to be using is kind of small. So let's change this to 4x4 and make it a small board. All right. And when I do that now, I can do my home button down here and make my graph paper a little larger so I can see it a little better. So I'll click the home button, and now this is centered in there. All right, so I'm going to center that, edit, send it to material. All right, good. Now before I forget, we do want to add some radius to this, and so it looks more like a knob. And again, I'm going to add a quarter. Now it's more shaped, more like a knob would be. The knobs usually have a rounded center, so I'm going to add a circle to the center. In a circle, we're going to link it. Remember, if you do a circle and do the width and height different values, then you have an ellipse. So if you want them both the same to maintain the circle, just click that link button. I'm going to make it 3/4 of an inch, and we're off and running. Again, same thing, going to center the material. If you look over here now, we see that we have these two objects on top of each other. And over on this side, they create on the piece of wood what looks like the top of a knob, which is great. That's what we want. But in order to maintain that, we need to combine these two. So I'm going to use the combine feature. And now nothing's changed over here. It looks the same. But now when I click on it, there's only one piece there. Right? And I moved it a little bit, so I'm going to make sure it's centered again. So now it's one piece using the combine function. Before we go too far, I'm going to copy this. Edit copy. And I'm going to paste it. Now I'm going to take this and move it over to the side here a little bit. Hang on. Get my way a little bit. I'm just going to move this out of the way a little. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to change it. This one we're going to cut all the way through. I'll make a hole. See, there's a hole here. But I don't want to cut the whole pocket out. All I want to do is cut outside the shape. So now it's cutting my knob out. See it? It also has tabs, and the number of tabs are 2. So let me see if I can move this up a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to change the tabs to 2 because I think 4 tabs is a little much. But I'm going to move one to this side. All right, so we have one on that side and one up here on the top. There we go. Now I have, if I click on it again, you'll see my tabs. Let me move this out of the way. There we go. So now we have an outline to cut out our knobs, and we have 2 tabs on it, so it's ready to go. All right, at this point, I'm going to remember now the knob itself, the top of the knob is on the bottom of our piece of plywood, so we're working upside down here. So I'm going to put a center on it again. Let's add another center. And this one is going to be, again, 3/4 by 3/4. I'm going to link it so it doesn't become an ellipse. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to move it just a little bit so you can see it a little better. I'm going to change the cut to 0. In other words, I'm not going to cut it at all. So what have I done? I actually have this thing here. And if we take it and move it into the middle, you'll see that it becomes a part that's not cut out yet. So let me go to center this. Okay. And now if you look at what we have here, and we don't show everything, but if I take this now and put this to the center as well, what do I have now? Look what I have. I have a knob. I have a center portion that's not been cut yet, and I can cut out around the whole thing. All right. Now, if you notice, there's some areas here that have not been trimmed out. See this around here? So now I need another circle. This gets confusing, but I need another circle. And this circle, again, is linked, and it's 3/4 by 3/4. All right. And on this one, again, we're going to cut outside the pocket, outside the shape path. But here, we're only going to cut down as far as the bottom piece here, and that's 0.2 inches. So let's do that. And we're going to center it. All right. Now, if you look over here, you'll see that we've actually cleaned up that bit of a mess there. Except now, look where we are here. This doesn't show right, does it? Now, why is that? Well, the reason for that is this outside cut path that we have here needs to be the last, has to be the front, the last one we put in. So I'm going to bring it to the front. Look at the difference. It fixes the problem, doesn't it? We may have to fix it again, but for now it's okay. All right, so now let's add, we're going to go to our applications, and we're going to add a hexadecimal polygon. So it's a 6-sided polygon. That's 6-sided. This is really the shape of the nut, and in this particular case, we're going to use a 1/4 nut. And I measured point to point. That's from here, this point here, to this point here on the nut, and it's about 0.5 inches. 0.503 is what it measured when I checked the nut I had. And so half of that, because we need the radius, is 0.2515. All right, so we have a 6-sided figure. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to import it. And there it is down there. Now I'm going to take this guy and be very careful with him. I'm going to rotate him 30 degrees. That brings him, makes him flat. Now I'm going to center him. But first, before I do that, I'm going to change my cut. In this case, I actually want to cut, I want to clear out a pocket. And the pocket is the shape of the nut. How deep do I want it? Well, I think that 0.2 inches isn't bad. Something around there. Doesn't have to be exactly that, but because the nut is about a 1/4 inch thick, the one I measured anyway, and it's about a 1/4 inch thick. So let's go with that. Now that's sitting here, and you can see it's pretty much what we want. Now let's center it. Edit, center. Now it's in the middle of our knob, isn't it? And there's our hex nut. All right. Well, we have to have some place for the bolt to go. So let's go back and make another circle. We'll bring a circle. This circle now is going to be linked again. You want it to be a true circle, not an ellipse. This time we're going to make it 0.27 inches. The bolt is 1/4 inch. We want to leave a little clearance on the side, so we're going to make it 0.27. And this particular one, we need to cut all the way through, don't we? Because this one the bolt has to go all the way through, so we have to cut it all the way through. And you notice when we do that, we've created a hole, which is what we want. And we're going to clear out a pocket. This is going to do a bore. So we're going to be boring this hole, not drilling it, but boring it. Right? So now we're going to edit, center the material again. So here's what we have. Let's take a look at it. If we go over here to our knob, things are starting to look up here. We have what looks like the bottom side of a knob with the rounded edge. Here we have the wings for so we can tighten it. We have a place to insert our 1/4 nut, and we're going to put a little CA glue to hold that in place. And then we have a hole for the bolt to go through. So this guy is now ready to go. But remember some of the things we had to change to work on that. And one of them was to make sure that our cut area on the outside here was in the front. I'm going to bring it to the front again to see what it does. Notice no change because that's where it was. This one needs to be in the front too, doesn't it? Because it needs to cut that hole through. So you have to have a specific order when you're building these more complex models, and you have to mess around a little with your your controls here. You can send it to the back. In this case, I'm going to send it to the back, and you'll notice it doesn't work anymore. I'm going to do it again and bring it to the front. Now it works fine, but you can bring it up one place if you wanted. So we have set it backwards one click, and that moves it back one click, 2 clicks. It was still okay. In other words, we could still put it in that position and have it work. And that would leave the last 2 things we do on top of it. And the last 2 things we did were create the hex hole and create the hole in the middle. And they're not in the way, so this doesn't affect those. All right, but you have to play around with that a little bit to get a feel for it. So build a model and just move things around a little bit so you're comfortable with that cutout. All right, this is ready to go now. One problem I have though is my grain orientation on this particular piece of plywood is in this direction from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to turn this 90 degrees. And let's do that here. So I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. And now it's oriented in the way my plywood is grain-wise. And I want to put it down here in this corner here. So I'm going to change my position, my X position to say, let's see, I can't use 1. I'm using a lower left corner here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this in, use a center measurement. Notice now when I go from corner to center, the X and Y positions change. And what they're doing, they're leaving this in the same spot and just adjusting the positions to reference the change. This time I'm going to make my centers 1 and 1. So now I put it down in the corner here. Why did I do that? Well, I want to make some copies, and I want to leave some room for my clamps. So I left a little room on the bottom for my clamp. Now I'm going to copy. I'm going to paste it. Now I'm on the second one, okay? Now this position, since I'm still in the center, we know my X position, that is from the left side, is still going to be 1. My Y position this time is going to be up top here a little bit. That's 3. Oh, lost my clicker here. Let me go back, Control Z, gets me back. I'll do it again. All right, and yep, okay. X is 1, we said, and Y will be 3. That's what happened. I put it right on top of itself so you couldn't see it. All right, there we are. So X is 1, Y is 3. All right, that gives me 2 of them. But I have room for a couple more over here, so I think I'll copy it again. We'll make 4 of them. So we'll do a copy. And this position, again, X is going to be the same, or excuse me, Y is going to be the same. We're not going to change that. But X is moving over a little bit. Let's try 3. All right. So now we have plenty of room around to clamp. We have 4 knobs. I think we're in pretty good shape. But remember, we have this centered. Everything is centered here. So if I click on all this, you'll notice that we're centered. So if I were to try and cut this, we'd still reference this point down here. However, if I change this position of all of it to 0 and 0, now we reference the center of the drawing. If you go over here, and if you'll notice, you can't see it here, but actually they're going to cut the knobs out here, and we would center our XY. When we set X, Y, and 0 equal to the center of our board to make the cut. Now I'm going to go back and revert that, all right? Because I don't really want to do that. I'm going to have X, Y equals 0, and I'm going to use the bottom left corner of the board as a reference for X, Y equals 0. So there we are. We have our finished project. What to do is simulate, see what we have. Now, if you look at it, it's going to take about 6 minutes. So here's what we have, a scrap piece of plywood. And in 6 minutes, we have the outline for 4 knobs. What we do is stick a couple of 1/4 20 nuts in there, and we're ready to go. one thing I caution you about, when you use a bit in any bit in CNC work, you have to measure the bit itself with a calipers. A lot of these bits you buy, I say they're 1/8 inch, but they're really not. Remember, they're all made in Taiwan and places like that. So they're all done in metric. And quite often you'll find this bit is not 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch would be 3.175, I believe, millimeters. You'll find it's something less than that, closer to 3 millimeters actually. So you have to be careful. So we'll have to measure our bit and before we do a cut here. And what that requires is a special bit, and we can only do that in the Pro version. So once we take this, you can leave this as 1/8 of an inch here, but once we import this over to the computer on the X-Carve, we'll have to make sure that our bit size is correct, and we can change it there if we need to. So just be prepared for that, and just give us something to think about. All right, there you go. That's the end of that lesson. I know a little complicated, a little different, but we did something very practical and useful, and used some scrap wood up. So that's a good deal. All right, see you in the next.